welcome to the stream. Again, it's Eric from Take Issue here, and I have a big update that I want to share with everyone today. So, first of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone for your support. I'm here to do this for everyone, and really I'm here to try to make something that's going to be valuable, that people are going to really want to use, and that I feel is making a difference in this world. And that's really where I approach this from. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who shows support, whether that be friends, family, and hopefully all the millions of people who will one day use Take Issue. Um, let's see here. Okay, so don't look at that. That's the special part. Let's go to Take Issue for now. This is what we see when we see Take Issue today. We see a big, basically a CRUD list of issues. And if you read my blog post back in late March, you would know sort of the types of things that we're thinking about getting ready to do. Actually, one thing I just forgot here. I just want to share the stream on Twitter. Cool. All right, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, okay. So it was basically just a big CRUD list of issues. And you could create an issue, update an issue, delete an issue. But one of the really major pieces of functionality that really make this platform start to tick is the ability to actually rank issues. So there was a pretty massive amount of work. It's been 4 months now. Granted, not all of those 4 months has been spent working on Take Issue. I have spent quite a few hours implementing the features you're about to see next. Thanks, Windows. Good to know that my performance is crap. Awesome. All right, so yeah, so let's just introduce new changes. So here is the new version of Take Issue running locally, and tonight we're gonna go over the backend code and the front end code and some of the things and hoops I had to jump through to get it to where it would be sufficient for what I'm trying to do. And then we will deploy it to production, and the ranking will be live for everybody after this. So I think that's pretty awesome, especially having spent so much time working on it. So let's take a look at version 2 of Take Issue. We still have our items in the list, all issues, which is now titled. We also have a ranked issues and a little italicized text that says drag ranked issues here. So let me just start off by saying finding a library in React that would do the type of drag and dropping we're looking for here was finding the library was not that difficult. Actually using the library and then augmenting the library such that I could do what it is I'm about to show you was the difficult part, and it really took quite a lot of time. But I'm really proud to demo it to here tonight. So like I said, but the difference here is that we can click and drag these issues now. You can drag this issue around your screen. Now you can see that when you hover over ranked issues, you get a blue background. So if we drop it up here, we're going to see this issue is now our #1 ranked issue in a particular place. What this is going to allow everyone to do is everyone will be able to rank the issues that they've created for their city. And we're just going to start to the next piece of work that ties this all together, and it won't come tonight, but it will come in the future, is the aggregation of that information so that we can show the most popular issues in a city, and that hopefully with the vision being that we'll actually be able to affect change. And really what I would describe Take Issue, I've been working on like what's a really good tagline for this, what's something that really captures the motivation behind this sort of application. And really, I think it's a, a democratic platform where everyone participates. Everyone ranks the issues together. Everyone can rank the issues however they see fit, and we can use that information to solve the most important issues as decided by the community. That's really the vision here, and this major development is the next step in achieving that. So you can see we have ranked issue, but we can also drag more issues into our ranked issues. So we can rank more than one issue, and you should by all means. And you can go in here, you can stick it up here, or you can stick it below. Let's say this is our number 2 issue. And don't worry too much about the text of this. It's more so just me kind of poking fun of myself when you spend 3 hours trying to code something and then it just turns out that you missed a semicolon somewhere or you did something really stupid. And it's those funny pitfalls we find ourselves in that really make these journeys as interesting as they are. But really, that's just my gallows humor coming out. So look, we have 1 and 2 now. Now, at one point, this was just a little UI mock-up at the very beginning stages. It didn't actually persist to the database. But say, let's refresh this. We can refresh, and there they are. They're saved, they're persisted. We can even let's drag the rest of these issues in there. So there's no more issues found, but we have 4 ranked issues. What if we wanted to change it? So let's take this issue. Actually, wait, you know what? This is our priority number 1 issue. So let's go stick it up here. Look at that, reorders the whole list. So all of our issues are reprioritized in the order that we'd expect. So that's the demo. That's really the new thing that we can do, and it's similar to the works in the similar vein as to Reddit's upvote and downvote interaction. It's essentially an interaction that allows you to rate the particular type of comment or to promote a particular type of comment, but it's just a different way of doing that. So we're prioritizing issues as opposed to upvoting and downvoting. But let me just see here. So let's jump into some code here. First let's start with our backend. So first we have our backend changes, and we could just look at some of what's going on here. Now, I'm not going to lie. When you're in the beginning stages of a project, it is a little bit difficult to code holistically. You're trying to reach for a minimum viable product without spending years and years and years, all the while recognizing that you're only one person with limited amounts of time to do this sort of thing. So you code for the purpose of getting shit done. And that doesn't mean writing shitty code, but it does mean that there's definitely some opportunities for refactoring, and you're definitely taking on some order of tech debt as you go through the process. The point here is that you want to get to your MVP as quick as possible so that you can start to find a way to start refactoring some of that tech debt. But a good time to start refactoring some of that tech debt is once you get your MVP out there. I would say at this point, we're not even at the MVP level. Really, at this point, we are just at the M. We have a minimum, which is a CRUD app that I built off a serverless stack tutorial, and big shout out to Jay for providing that. You can really get stuck in some patterns of not knowing how to start. I have an idea, but how do I start? Well, I spent months looking at frameworks, and I got into this sort of, you don't get anything done. There's actually a phrase for it that I can't recall at this moment, but you don't get anything done because it's some sort of paralyzed sort of analogy, but you get paralyzed from all the different choices that are out there and you just don't start. So this serverless stack tutorial, I encourage anyone who has an idea, anyone who wants to get a CRUD style app up and running, to go out and go to serverless-stack.com and build the website they have there. It's the best tutorial for building the full front-end, back-end unit tests, continuous integration that I've seen ever. So really recommend it. It's really what started me on the track to get to where we are today. So let's see here. First of all, we have, okay, so what's this? Cognito Identity ID. Okay, so I use my user management as Cognito, and what I wanted to do was if a user is logged in, they can come in here and they can put in their Cognito identity. Well, their Cognito identity ID gets populated by Cognito when they log into the web app. And then when you send a request over to Lambda, which is another Amazon AWS service, it just hooks into the Cognito identity provider and provides their identity ID right into the request and then that's received by the Lambda in the response. So what I wanted to do was get that if they're logged in. Now the problem is, actually I'll show you. Let's go back over to the local version. What happens when I log out, right? So I'm logged in, shows my ranked issues, but what if you're logged out? Well, you can log back in, but if you go back to the issues, you just see all issues. So you could still drag them around, but you can't do anything with them. They just go back to where they are. You can only drag them into ranked issues. So one of the things that was difficult here is that this is an unauthorized get endpoint. So anybody can call this endpoint, and really that's how I wanted this application to work. I wanted anybody to be able to use it. So we leave that open. Now the problem with leaving that open, though, is that if it's unauthenticated, you don't get the headers. You don't get that Cognito Identity ID header by default. It's always null in the response because you're not using an authorizer, which is set on the endpoint as you set it up in API Gateway. So if there's no authorizer, if it's an unauthorized endpoint, you never will get the Cognito Identity ID. So I struggled a little bit trying to figure out, okay, how do I use the library that I'm using to find the get the Cognito Identity ID. And actually, we'll go take a look at that. So here's the ranking spike. It's not actually, let's call this ranking implementation. There we go. But yeah, let's take a look here. Let's take a look at our changes, and I'll show you kind of where that goes in. So probably the biggest choke. I mean, you look at it and you're like, oh, that's only 300 lines, whatever, but it's still a pretty major piece of functionality. And like I said, I wasn't able to really dedicate hundreds of hours to this. I was able to dedicate a few hours here and there over the course of a couple months, and a lot. You think you can just go in here and write thousands of lines of code. There's so much discovery you need to do. There's so much debugging everything that you want to do. If it's novel and it's particularly interesting or whatever, just if it's novel, it's going to take some doing to get it right, to get it to actually work. So you really just spend a lot of your time. I think I spent more of my time just trying to make things work rather than write the code. All right. So how did I say we did this? Just kidding. Here it is. It's actually right. No, it's not right here. It's down here. And we'll go through all this code because I think it's really interesting and we'll see. But we go down to our notes. I should just search for it here. Notes. Dun, dun, dun. Cool. So here's what we are doing. So basically, we do an await for the current user info for the user. And mind you, when this is running locally, I can't test against federated identity. So for example, Facebook, just because the local dev environment doesn't use HTTPS, it only uses HTTP, and you have to put your Facebook app into development mode. And maybe I should just make a second Facebook app just for these purposes, but whatever. We get the current user info, which is a really nice method we get off the global auth. And then we either set that to the user's ID or we set that to null, and then we pass it into notes. Now notes takes a token. This is old. One sec. Actually, I refactored that while we were doing this, and let me add those changes in here. Because, okay, well, okay, I guess I can show you why I refactored it. I also refactored this function too, so we'll go and we'll push these in. But let's first take a look. So when I first tried to figure out how to pass this into a get method, we pass the location ID to the get endpoint for issues, which are actually called notes, and that's something that's going to need to be refactored as well. That's a holdover from the serverless stack tutorial, um, and so I did some searching around, and as you do when you're asking programming questions, you come into Stack Overflow, and it says you can do this. So I reused the authorization key in the headers to pass the token, just because that's all I could find. And that felt like a hack to me. That's not. I just said earlier, take on some tech debt. This wouldn't have been tech debt. This would just have been wrong. So I decided not to do it, and I'll show you what I did end up with. And just let me commit these changes first. Let's see here. So one thing that I never knew how to do in Visual Studio Code was how to select individual changes and then actually just commit individual changes at a time. I know it's really easy to just, oh yeah, right click on a file, stage all my changes, and commit those to the branch, but it doesn't help people if you're not really granular with your changes and the messages. So for example, and it's a hotly contested issue, but that's just the way I do it. So I'll take these, because this is part of it, and I'll do stage selected ranges. So we get that staged, and this one as well. And do we have anything else? Oh, a little bit of a note. Always add comments, especially if you know you're writing some spaghetti code. Okay, so we'll just stage that. We'll call that refactor rank function. Then we will take, then we'll go back into our changes, and whatever. I don't mind about bringing the comment in with this. We'll call this use, and most of you are going to be like, duh, use query string parameters, because that is something that exists for get requests. Throw extra information to your get request into a into the query string parameters, and it'll come out in the response on the server. So that's pretty much all you need to do, and that's really, that's mostly it. So we'll go back in here and we'll look at some of the changes again. We'll go back down to home.js. Okay, so we have our function now. We'll get into that after, although I am showing that first. But let's go back down to our current user info. So yeah, like I said, we get we do all that. We stick it into notes as the token, and then we pass it in the query string parameters. We pass an actual identity, cognito identity ID, which is fine. It's totally standard to do that. On the back end, I'm not sure the entire process that happens. It's actually two get requests. One is an options request first, which I think has to do with the fact that I'm sending a query string parameter, and also that I've enabled cross-origin request scripting, CORS as it's normally referred to, but it works. I'll pop back in here and just look at the rest of this. So the rest of this is pretty simple. First thing first, I explicitly select the fields that I want for the query. I do a left join on my rank table, which I had to create, where issue ID and rank from the rank table, where the user ID equals the user that is logged in. So that's actually works in both scenarios. If there's no one logged in, then those just come back null, which is fine. And if there is someone logged in, anything they have ranked comes back, and we just show it on the page. So this is our list. and this is our rank endpoint. This is the actually ranking. So this is a brand new function I had to write, and it does a lot of very similar things. And this next piece, okay, so one thing I didn't know how to do was, if say I want to insert, someone makes a new rank, that's fine, that's clearly an insert. But what if someone has two issues ranked, and then they want to modify them? So that's actually an update. And how do I know when to insert versus when to update? And this is an age-old question. When I actually searched it, there was probably answers to this from 15 years ago. So um, it's a question that's been asked and answered quite a bit, and probably I should have known better, but I'm not a SQL expert, to be honest. And it turned out that you insert this, and then you pass it your values, and we'll get to that in a second. And then you run this little clause that says on conflict, on constraint, your rank primary key. And the primary key here is a combination of the issue ID and the user ID. So one user can only ever rank an issue once. They can't rank an issue more than once. Um, so if there's a conflict, then we know it's an update. I'll turn these things off. I don't care. Um, and then it's actually really easy. All you have to do is this. So basically, set the issue. Actually, it includes this as well. So you basically just write a set command. You basically just write an update command after that. It just loops over all of the ones that were updates versus insert. So it'll handle inserts. It'll handle reordering. Actually, will it handle an insert into a new spot? That's a good question. I think it does. Let's just make sure. Wait, I can't. Yeah, it works. I can't rank them when I'm not logged in. Let's log in. Okay, so a little. Damn. Okay. I can't. I'd have to make one. Yeah, okay, let's make one. I never tried this actually. I hope this works. Not bad. Okay, so yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I refresh this, here we go. And if I stick this in the middle, it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then if I refresh, it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so this insert on conflict update, it works pretty good. You can throw whatever data you wanted it. It's going to figure out what needs to be inserted. It's going to figure out what needs to be updated. But let's look at values for a sec. So, oh man, this is the data I'm passing. So if I ever need to figure out what this horrible block of code is doing, I can just throw it into a JS fiddle with this as my starting data, and I can figure out, oh, okay, figure out how it's working. So basically, this is the response to the rank whenever you drag an issue from your unranked to your ranked. It's going to call this function, and this function gets a data structure that is a nested array of two values in each nested array. And I had to turn that into a prepared statement, and I did something actually quite foolish. I tried to do it in a string. I basically built a I built a parser that would just turn it into a string. Actually, I shouldn't say I built a parser. I don't think I could ever build a parser of anything. But I basically converted it into a string, and then you see how I use mod 3, and what is this even? I wrote this a couple days ago, and I look at it now, I'm just like, no idea. And then I do if mod 3, we have to do this thing, and then we put the end, and it's like an open bracket here, and then we tell it where our end parentheses should be, and then we do the close. We say, should we close the parentheses, and that equals the Boolean result of that expression, and then if not mod 3, oh my, I'm so embarrassed just showing this code to anyone, but whatever, you do what you gotta do to get to where you need to go. Um, I mean, we're just talking code here, so we do values, we add and then we do I+1, which we needed to do because prepared values start at 1, not 0. And then we say if this is not the closed param, then we do a comma, otherwise no comma, because if you have trailing commas in your values clause for Postgres, it tends to not be so happy about that, so I had to write that into this. But then by the end of it, you get this values, and it has these all the different dollar sign values necessary for a prepared statement in good old PG library, and we pass that into this query, and that's basically that's basically it. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, there's this too. So yeah, one thing I implemented recently, I took the primary key out of the user-facing API. You used to just pass back the primary key of the issue that you wanted to get. That I don't. That reveals too much about you. You just in general shouldn't. You should keep your database state internal and then have some sort of other sort of identifier that you can use on the front end for users to see. In this case, we chose a public ID that's just basically a UUID, and that's what we use now. But we have to look up the ID of the actual issue first. So we select the ID from the issues table where the public ID is equal to $, because this is a prepared statement. And then we do our query, and then we're good to go. Here's a little bit more of a sane structure where um, we take these issue rank pairs, and then we take the values and we push them onto the args list, and then we pass that into the query, and bingo bango, we're done. That's it. That's everything to do on the back end. So, having said all that, let's merge it. Looks good to me. +1 looks good to me. I'll +1 these one day, starting after we get to MVP. Yeah, I think that's all I have to do here. Let's merge this puppy. Sweet. Okay, that's merged. I'm gonna go grab some water and I will be right back. All right, let's get to it. So we merged that. That's good to go. We won't deploy that to production, but let's deploy it to development. So hey, you might be saying, what is this? This is Seed, which is a piece. I think Seed was, I think the serverlessstack.com tutorial was actually written for Seed. Seed was the product that I think his name's Jay is working on. And I mean, hey, I think it's great that they contribute to uh, just the community in general and make something like that. And it uses Seed, and hey, look at this. Seed is actually really useful for deploying serverless applications to your development environment or your production environment. And one thing I'll say is that having a development and a production environment is invaluable, even in getting to your MVP. Having two different environments where you can, okay, test everything on dev, make sure it works, and then push it to prod, and make sure that you're never just going total Wild West and pushing things to prod that are in test states when you want to have an app that people are actually using. So we'll go here, we'll click deploy, we'll load master, we'll deploy that. So another big shout out to those guys. Seed, serverless stack, I'm trying to build something here and I have a novel idea and I want to execute on that novel idea. And in order to do that effectively, when you're one person and you have, um, big dreams, you dream big, you need the tools around you so you don't have to go solve everything. You need user identity and authentication. You can't write that yourself. It's not novel to your problem. You just need to have it. You can't go write a CI, you can a continuous integration, something that's going to do all your builds for the front end. You can't build something that's going to do all your builds for the back end. You can't run a server. You can't run your hardware. You can't get it. You can't do all the infrastructure you need to run a server if you really want to tackle the world in terms of scale. You really have to pull all these things in as tools, and AWS makes that really easy. I don't have to write an API gateway. I don't have to write a server that I stand up that has all my endpoints in it that then do authorization. Like, I don't have to manage that, and that's one of the most freeing things I think that I've seen in the tech community in the last, who knows, it just brings everything closer to that person. It's like when we had printers in the post office and then everyone had a printer in their home. Sorry, I thought I heard something. It was just it was just someone taking a shower. Just the water going. So you can see this has been running for 2 minutes. It takes my serverless YAML that we just deployed into our backend, and it's going to take all those services and it's going to push them. It's going to push them to the Lambda. It's going to update the API gateway. It's going to do whatever. We can probably just go away from this. I'm fairly confident that's going to succeed, although that's usually when it fails. Let's go jump into some of the changes on the front end, which are the more numerous. Um, so yeah, okay. We got some nice little CSS changes. Anything with comments, I should actually probably really get rid of. So let's jump into. I don't want to have all this stuff hanging around that I don't actually need. Usually I comment it out if I don't need it, and then if I do need it, I'll go back and I'll grab it. We don't need this. We don't need this. It's good there. Yeah, let's refresh this. Okay, gotta go like that. Actually, it's funny. We actually, if you don't explicitly control as, it actually doesn't save. There we go. Sure, commit that. All right, what's next? Yeah, a couple different explicit CSS changes. That's just something you're gonna have to do on the topic of things you can't write yourself. You can't do all the HTML and CSS and user interface yourself. I tried that once with a project I worked on a while ago called TasteBud. It was a restaurant directory service, but I basically used templating engines like mustache.js, if anyone remembers that. But now that's all been kind of wrapped up into React, and React is another one of those freeing technologies that makes individual app development, I think, much more accessible. And then behind that, you have your different UI libraries like Material UI, which I've used, or React Bootstrap, which I've used, or if you're on the Dart side, there's also Flutter, which I've heard really good things about. But you save so much time by being able to leverage these user interface libraries, and they're really quite nice. And so shout out to the people who write those, because it just helps so much. But even still, you're gonna have to go in here. You're gonna have to figure out how you're gonna have to make a couple tiny little tweaks here and there. Like, I had to make this whole class, and it's like, why did I have to do that? Did the library not have anything that could do the UI I was looking for? Not really. And to be fair, I think I just totally ripped that off the React Bootstrap page. Sorry guys. Sorry folks. But let's get into home. So we have this saved rank function, which takes a result and it makes an issue rank map. And then we basically, this is the structure that goes into the backend. We take the public ID and the rank and we send that to our API.post endpoint, which is rank with the issues rank map. And we also update the created by in that as well, but we get that for free because this is an authorized function through API Gateway. Now, this is some boilerplate code that came from one of the code that came from the React beautiful drag and drop library example that allowed you to drag issues between lists. And let me just say right now, this would not have been possible without the React beautiful D&D library. So a massive shout out to those guys, to those folks, and just that was an immensely helpful thing. It's an immensely helpful library. It's done everything I needed it to do, um, especially when I didn't want people to be able to drag back into the same list. You know, one thing that I wish I could try, but one thing that I showed you right at the beginning was that ranked issues, if you didn't have anything ranked, there was a placeholder text, and I'll actually show you how we did that down here, because that's something I searched high and low. How do you do a placeholder text with it? That's not just the placeholder that exists inside the droppable element, and people didn't really know how, but I have some conditional logic that allows you to do that, that either shows the placeholder, or if there's nothing in that list, it shows an empty list with a like a default text, which is something you expect to see in different input boxes. And this ranked issues is essentially an input box, so that's why I was able to use it like that. But this is all, a lot of this stuff is boilerplate. There's not really much to go through here. The only novel piece of this is that if I do a reorder or if I do a move, I take the, I save the ranked. So I've injected my own little piece of code into both of these functions that will save your ranks if you re-rank your items. Item style, I made a couple changes to these. I guess I could get rid of some of those commented out codes. Let's do that too. All right, get rid of this commented out stuff and just take a look for maybe anything else that's commented out, because I just don't, it doesn't help to just hold on to any of that stuff. Or I should take a peek for any console.logging. That's something I've had in there for a long time. Same with that. This commented out div, we don't need to keep that around. Is there a beginning div that's commented out? No, that's scary. What was the other thing I wanted to? Yeah, console.log. So, okay, we're logging something there. We don't need to do that, but we could just comment it out. And then we'll commit that as well. Lots of commits called remove unneeded code. But hey, unneeded code, that's good. So I initialize the state there's another list for ranked issues. Is this where I pass the token? Yeah, it's where I pass the token, and then we do, yeah. And okay, so it's really easy once I make the call to the unauthenticated get endpoint for all of the issues, not notes. Once again, a holdover from serverless stack tutorial. I iterate over all the issues in data, and then I populate either the issues list or the ranked issues based on whether there's a rank property on the issue. And then I sort them, and then I set notes to issues. We'll get there one day. It's refactoring, right? And then, yeah, we do the request string parameters, and we go from there. Here's some more boilerplate stuff. All this stuff was boilerplate, but once again, absolutely essential to being able to do this. This is probably the most difficult part, and this was really just kind of grunt work, making sure that I could display my existing UI inside of a inside of a draggable. So this is render notes list. Really, it should be render issues list, and this shows all the different issues we have available to us. And what I've done is I've refactored it to be enclosed in a draggable. So this is a weird thing. We had an empty object inside of a list, and then we concatenated notes into it, and then did a map. And that was part of the tutorial because if I isn't, so they basically insert a empty object at the beginning of the list and then say if I isn't equal to 0, then we show our items. Well, why would they do that? And the reason they did that, and to be fair, it might not still be the way they do it. I basically started this on a version of serverless stack that's probably a year old or more by now, so they might do something differently. But what they used to do is down here on the in the else, they would, where is it? I think in the else they would do no results. So no results would be I equals 0. Is that correct? Oh no, yeah, they would use that first empty object for the new. So create a new issue. I guess like if you want something to always appear at the very top, you could do it like that. But I ended up getting rid of that. I don't know, for one reason or another, it didn't fit. It was a different type of element inside a list of what's supposed to just be issues. So that caused a couple problems. But basically, we have our draggable, which is, I mean, this is kind of boilerplate stuff too. And then inside of here, I'm rendering my issue. So the issue used to be, as you can see, like a pretty straightforward list group item. I still have it in a list group item. It's a little bit different. We do a lot of the same stuff, but then we have a table, and we build a table that actually shows these different issues. Now, I could probably bring them. I could probably bring them back to the way they were before, because I was using. At first, I had everything ranked, so all these issues down here would be, and all issues would have the ranking. Um, and now they don't need to they don't have a ranking associated with them at all, so we don't need to do that anymore. Um, I don't know, this is just, yeah, so whatever, a couple of UI changes, nothing that intense, although we do run a truncate function on the description now, so it doesn't overflow outside of the issue container, which was kind of hilarious and horrible when that happened, and I did this to accomplish that. And that's a big thank you to Stack. Looks like that actually existed before, but I did implement that recently. Um, that is complained about by the browser, but whatever. All right, so next up we have, this is another major piece. So I have a bunch of if statements here. Once again, please forgive my inline JSX conditional rendering logic. I know it's making this spaghetti code, and it's going to be impossible to maintain in the future. And trust me, if I can get the resources I need, I will refactor it. Please, programmers, give me forgiveness. But basically, this is our create a new issue, and like this is not important stuff. This is our drag drop context. Then we say if they're authenticated, show the ranking box. Otherwise, don't show the ranking box. And here's all the different stuff that's going on in the ranking box. This actually looks way better in an IDE. It's actually looks proper. It's not just straight up red text. Um, I've confused GitLab to the point that it can't even. Let's hide. Oh, look at that. That makes things way easier. Oh, look at this. Oh wow, closing that doesn't make this much larger. That's hilarious. Custom styles, inline CSS, inline JSX, conditional logic, rendering. Oh yeah, this is just a total smorgasbord of all kinds of different things. But did you see that demo? It works really well. It just doesn't look good under the hood, and that will cause a problem long term. But right now, I think we can deal with it. Yeah, so that's it. There's the changes. I think I've gone over all of the difficult pieces or where interesting solutions were required. Some of the problems I faced when doing the drag and drop was realizing that the placeholder is necessary so that the container for the droppables expands when you drag a potential item over it. I had a problem where it wasn't expanding and it was making it the UI more difficult to use. Also, for what it's worth, this all works on your phone, so feel free to use this desktop, phone, tablet, whatever you want. That's the power you get from these. For example, I guess it's React Bootstrap that is quite responsive in that way, and just another place, just another piece of the puzzle where it makes things a lot easier. It's one less thing that you have to invent. That's not novel to your problem. Those things should just be there. Um, but that's basically it. I'd say the most difficult pieces were in the back end, in actually transforming data structures and persisting data into the database. But let's merge this too. All right, ranking implementation. Here we go. Here we go. Merge. That's a lot of commits. I love it. +1. Just kidding. All right, let's check out seed. Okay, so that did succeed 16 minutes ago. Excellent. I hope one day I have a viewer. I'll keep trying to do high quality streams, but I hope one day I have a viewer. Let's see how many people. Why don't I have two screens? I should totally have two screens. Oh, it'd also be cool if I changed the title of this to reflect what it is I'm actually doing. Make it sound amazing. Big development update. Just the type of clickbait we need. Excellent. All right, that went to dev. What are we going to do here? We're going to break it temporarily while I merge non-backwards compatible things to production. That sounds good. All right, everyone's watching this anyway. I can't do this in the future. Okay, so that's been merged to master. So what we should see here, if we refresh Netlify, don't even get me started on Netlify. Okay, Netlify, total management, total CI, integration with Git. If I push to a branch, that's a merge request. That's a merge that's been created as a merge request. Every time I push a new commit to that branch, Netlify will automatically build a new deploy preview, and you'll be able to look at that code, which is once again immensely valuable. Not something that I could have ever built in my spare time. In fact, the only manual thing to this entire process is clicking the button in seed to deploy and then promote to production your particular backend serverless configuration. But as you can see, once we merge it into master, it's going to go live on master. So we're building right now, and this is going to go to master. So here we are at the precipice of the second major release of Take Issue, which will, I'm hoping, shortly be followed by the third major release, and we'll truly have our MVP. But this is a pretty massive development milestone, and I'm glad that anyone who's interested is listening or taking issue. That takes a while to build. While that's building, I should promote this to production. Let's do that. Promote this to production. Yes, okay, good. It didn't give away any changes, give away any secrets. But the nice thing is, look at this. Code changes, no problem. Function, 3 minor Lambda changes, 3 minor API gateway changes. Let's do it. Hopefully that succeeds. I've had it not succeed in production before, and that can be a real nightmare. Okay, merged. Bingo, bango. Look at that. Published. I bet you it doesn't work right now. I think I screwed things. Maybe it does work. Is it backwards compatible? We'll soon find out. It might not be. If it's not, that's just kind of unfortunate. We'll get some sort of weird error if it doesn't work. And then obviously I couldn't do this if I actually. Oh no! Look at that. It does work. Look at that. Look at that. Ranked issues. Don't use it though. It won't work until I merge this change. So what I should have done is I should have put this behind a feature flag. I should have just disabled this, and then I'd merge the backend code, and then I would merge a new version that enabled it. That would have been the way you'd handle this. But yeah, this is what we got. Looks pretty good. And drag and drop. Oh yeah, I think that's gonna fail, right? Let's watch it fail. Uh, no, yeah, okay, it did fail. You wouldn't have thought so just by using it. Trust me, it did fail. Anyways, we'll just let that run to production, which unfortunately could take some number of minutes. Basically, it runs cloud formation in the at the end of the day, it just runs CloudFormation. It just automates the process into this nice, really awesome UI. Um, trust me, if I ever, trust me, I will do my very best to repay everyone who has created these individual tools that make this process a hell of a lot easier to follow through on. It is very much in my plans. I might write a new blog post once we get to an MVP, and then talk about where our next steps are from there. We'll see. Look at that. 2 minutes ago, and it succeeded. Now you might ask, did you remember to create the table in the actual backing database? And the answer is no, I didn't. But I did get to doing that just before I started the stream. So if we go to take issue now, refresh, drag an issue to ranked issues, and I think bring Uber to the zoo is my most important issue, and refresh. It should have saved, and if it didn't, I'm keeping the confetti in the boxes. No, what didn't work? That's promoted to production 2 minutes ago. This is merged. Everything's merged. Give me 1 second here. Okay, I think I know what it is. I think it is the Facebook user, the federated identity that's not passing through the Cognito identity ID to the backing request. As far as I can tell from my network requests, the request to rank is working properly. We're just not seeing the federated user in current user info function, and I think that's just why it's not getting passed to the backend, and thus why we can't actually make this insert work. I'll verify that by looking at the database and seeing if the records got inserted without a created by, and I will work right now on addressing this very last bug, which is something that I'd like to be able to test in development prior to releasing to production, but it is a little bit difficult, and there are some very subtle differences between how federated identities and straight up Cognito identities work in Cognito, and how you access the different properties of them. So we'll probably call it a day here. Overall, great success. Glad to have you with me. If you have any questions, be sure to leave some feedback, and I will continue to create these videos whenever we have big development milestones or any updates that we want to share with you. I hope that I can continue, I plan to continue to make these and be as transparent as possible as I can to my users, and don't be evil, right? Don't be evil. Don't let power, um, absolute power, corrupt you, even though it always seems to. But it's we'll fight against it, and this is one of the steps of how we do that. So Thanks for everyone for tuning in. It's been a good update, and I hope you enjoyed it. And maybe next time we'll actually have someone who's watching, or we'll have someone who comments in the chat. All right. Thanks everyone. Have a great night. See you later.